We've talked a little bit about this, but maybe we'll ask it in a more specific way. Maybe what was, Lisa, your biggest challenge in maintaining sort of the home and family life along with studying? And maybe we should have even written that sort of your professional and family life. So you're working in an office and family life, and the third thing is studying in here. How did you, what was the biggest challenge you had? And how did you overcome it, I suppose?
Uh, the biggest challenge, I guess it's just sort of challenging logistically. That's the
Mm-hmm.
biggest challenge. It's not a very exciting answer, but it is essentially just fitting it in. And then overcoming the challenge, I think studying and taking these tests became this sort of like bridging thing where like my family was on my side, and then of course my office was on my side, and it was sort of like this like overarching thing that was like gonna hopefully make in the end both situations better.
Hmm.
And I also looked to it, I guess you could say I'm a little bit goal oriented,
Mm-hmm.
and this is something I'm just coming up with as I'm sitting here thinking. And my children were always fairly mysterious to me, and I didn't always. It's always just like extremely like mind-boggling what just the amount of energy it takes to take care of children. So taking these tests and just sort of being able to check these boxes and being like, I am still a person that can like learn and do the right thing and further my career. I can still do it. A little bit of a confidence booster that I think I might have needed also in the amidst this sort of like upheaval of your life, like kind of taking care of a whole family. So I think
And
I went a
Lisa,
little bit off track there, but I think the tests and everything just became like a part of both lives.
you did that on sleep deprivation too with
Yeah.
infants. That's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I
I did it pregnant.
Lisa,
I did
I
it
can
not
hear the
pregnant.
swagger. I can hear your swagger from through the microphone. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Yep, I did that.
you earned it.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I mean, it was just like, I can do this. This is somehow going to be having a career and having good, well-kept children can happen somehow.
Sean, what are your thoughts on
well,
this one?
Mine emotionally was really trying to get that time management, working with very different schedules with my kids, being very active young kids, and me wanting to not miss any moment with them. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a real hard emotional kind of challenge for me. As yeah, architecture is important, but it's not my life. So I really wanted to have that balance of getting those opportunities with the kids and the balance with work. There were times that I had to manage putting this off a little bit for projects schedules. So it was really time management for me.
Okay. How about you,
yeah.
Joe?
Well, very similar to both the other guys. I kind of I set my priorities, going into it. I've always had kind of the same priority level. My family comes first, and then my job comes second, and this was a tight third. So I absolutely, when it came to it, wasn't going to let this trump any of those things. And that became the biggest challenge, I guess. Coming back to the question was, your wife or your husband, they're picking up slack and they're happy to do so, or maybe not, but they're doing it and they're helping. And and that's great, and that's not a bad thing for that first test. But then you start, then there's a second and a third and a fourth, and it gets to be difficult over time. And so I made the decision that if my wife needed a break, if we were going on that vacation, or if it was my daughter's, dance recital that was coming up, then, that stuff wasn't going to get missed. And it was up to me then to work that remaining study time in. And
Mhm.
that's why I'd be surprised if the majority of parents who find themselves studying don't end up having to create that time by either getting up earlier or staying up later or studying over the lunch break or what have you.
It's interesting. It sounds a little bit it sounds like one of the principles here is about being flexible, but also about being focused. So in a way, you sort of set your priorities, but if something comes up that is, let's say you didn't really plan for, well, you might shift your priorities and you might say, okay, well, I was planning on doing this, but I'm gonna sort of shift my priorities and do this other thing instead. But then I'm gonna get back to what I was doing. Is that a fair thing to say?
And that is going to happen. That is absolutely going to happen, and I would be shocked if it didn't happen continually, more than once. And that just comes into the dedication, and you're and again, like I said, I mean, you can pull from these traits that you're forced to learn, and this kind of maturity you develop as a new parent. I mean, though that skill set that you develop in becoming a parent is going to make sticking with the study process a little bit more manageable. At least it did for me.
It's very true.
One thing I think that we all agree on too, in that second part of the question, how did you overcome the challenge, is that your family has to buy into it too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Like,
100%.
You definitely have to take time. Occasionally, you can't always study at night, and you're gonna need a little bit of time to be able to do it. Your family, and if they're kind of, you can get them kind of excited about it, they're really supportive, and that really helps too.
Yeah, and you're gonna do the best you can. My wife and I, let's see, it was the very end of January, start of February last year that I signed up for the actual class that was going to be attacking these things, and we did our best to sit down and kind of map out the year. We knew we were going to go down to see her family for the holiday. We knew we were going to try to take a vacation in the summer, so we try to map these things out, and of course it almost never goes the way you think it's going to go, as we've already said, and you just have to adapt, but that's why it will be much better if your family and your office, of course, are going to bat for you and supportive.
So Lisa, I want to raise a question here from one of our listeners. As a mother. So Saruchi asks, she says, please talk about how to get licensed with small children. It's especially harder for new mothers. We'd like to hear some time management tips from you, Lisa. I know that, I have kids, and I certainly saw a lot of the burden, certainly in the early years, be way more proportionally on my wife than myself. And so, Lisa, how did you kind of deal with that?
Looking back at my notes where I finally wrote back down when I took the tests and when I had my babies, I didn't start taking tests until after they were closer to 2. So that must be something about when routine gets a little bit more regular.
Okay.
Then there's, like dad puts him to bed too, and it doesn't, you don't have to sorry to get graphic, but you're not putting all of your loving energy into breastfeeding and getting up at night and all that kind of stuff. You can't, there's no reason to bother yourself with studying at that time. I think there needs to be a little bit of, you just have to be able to let go with some of your responsibility and put it in the hands of your spouse, and just go ahead, and if they're, you need them to be supportive, and you have to do it in the evening. And like I said, I could barely study at night. I definitely couldn't study in the morning. One of my kids doesn't ever sleep through the night, so that's just an aside thing. But I just can't. I can't do it at night. My husband has to give me time to be able to do it, and then that's why I ended up just doing the cramming. And you just have to study less than you think you need to, and then just take them and see if you actually pass some.
Well, and
the fear of failing is going to be pretty big, because you'll never have felt so unprepared for something. But you have to just get through it.
And Mark, I would say, just to kind of underline that point, and I'm obviously not a mother, So my experience was, of course, different. But I imagine there's probably several people listening and out there that, you know, maybe they don't have a spouse. They might be a single parent. And you still should hopefully have, you know, a support network of some sort of family or extended family, friends. The other thing I think, and I would imagine Lisa and Sean would both agree with me, that you have to also keep in mind is, though you have those priorities, your children are your priority, your family, and then your job and all these things. The other thing to keep in mind is, you know, you deserve this. You deserve to be licensed. You've been working. You went through a long ordeal in college. You didn't get to go out to all the parties in college. You're working in the studio. You know, you come out and you have to put in all this time, these years ahead of time, just to get to where you can take the tests. So you've earned the right to take those tests. So if you have to, you know, make certain other sacrifices, or if you have to ask that difficult question of your parents or your in-laws to say, you need to watch these kids for me on this schedule because, you know, I need to do this, then don't feel guilty in doing that.